Hi, I'm Lorna.
And I'm Ellie. We're here today to talk about our best books of 2022, 2023.
2023, babe.
What is time?
Well, in
Yeah.
some of these books, it's non-linear.
Yeah, true.
Um, cool. We'll start with our honorable mentions, which are books that did not make the top 10, but are still like pretty high up there on our lists.
Yeah.
Um, do we want to also just quick talk about how we selected the top 10?
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, how did you do yours?
So basically I only give 5 stars to a book if I think it's like kind of like a favorite, all-time favorite. And actually this year I had more 5 stars than I've ever had before. Like I think it was like 26 or something like that. So I actually had a
Wow.
lot to choose from. So it was kind of hard. But I guess I just chose the ones that stuck with me the most, and maybe not even that. But the ones that stuck with me, and I also thought were like fresh, like a new thing that I hadn't read before. That's like a big thing that I look for. So
I did a little bit of a different approach, I think. I think what really I ended up going with were like things that emotionally moved me. Like I think that I ended up going with books that like either they made me cry or after time I was still really thinking about them and hung up on them. Um, but I also tried to really prioritize like enjoying the reading experience too.
mhm.
Yeah, it was really hard though. It was really hard. I did not have as many 5 stars as you had. I don't remember the number, but it definitely was not near, not even close to 20. I think I had
Yeah,
maybe
but
12 or
did you
15.
think that there was more this year than last year, like the previous years we've talked about books? Because I feel like,
You know, it's interesting. I don't think so. Like I think that last year I had more 5 star books or at least more books that I was like, "Oh yeah, like this one's it." But
yeah.
this year when I went to pull favorite books, I didn't even look at the ratings initially. I just scanned through my list and pulled.
Mhm.
And there were only, I think, 7 books that I initially was like, yes, this is absolutely on my top 10.
So our top lists usually intersect more than our bottom lists do. So I think we should like close our eyes and hold up how many think we will not be in the same spot, because usually they're not in the same spot, but how many we think will be on both of our lists. Okay, you have it? Okay, close your eyes.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay,
Okay.
we'll see who's more right.
All right.
Okay, my first honorable mention, which is the one that I put on this list originally and then I took off, and then I was like, oh, should I put it back on? Is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And this one I took off because I read it mostly in 2022 when I was in Paris. And it was like an amazing experience reading it in Paris, because it's all about Paris and the architect of Paris and how that like drives the city. And I think I did actually read technically most of it in 2023 on like the plane ride home from Paris. So that's why I didn't include it in it last year. And I was like, oh, I'll include it this year. But now I'm like, that feels like a last year experience,
Because it's been so long.
because it's been so long. And it was like the being in Paris part was like part of it. And that happened in December of 2020, too. So that was my first honorable mention, but really liked it. I love Les Mis too. I like Victor Hugo. So yeah, love that one. Yeah, and then my other honorable mentions were ones that I like gave 5 stars and I really enjoyed, but just like they didn't feel like they belonged on this list, basically. The first one is Kick the Latch by Catherine Sgalin. And also, these were ones that I couldn't fit on our superlative list. So they basically, I want to like shout them out, say that I liked them, but I couldn't fit them on in any of our videos, basically. So this one, you read it too. It's about like horse track racing, and it's done in little vignettes, which is a style that we both like. And I mean, it was just also really eye-opening about the horse industry. And I live in Kentucky right now, so it's like, yikes.
Yeah.
but that one. And then Excellent Women by Barbara Pym, which I just had I thought it was so enjoyable and light and fun. And I had a fun time reading it. And I had like never heard of her before. And I thought she was kind of like Jane Eyre, or not Jane Eyre, Jane Austen, Agatha Christie kind of vibes with like small town England. You didn't like that one as much, but I thought it was really fun, and just warm and cozy. And then The Blind Owl by Sadegh Hidat, which is an Iranian book, and it's like a man going into a mental breakdown after killing his girlfriend or something like that. And there's like two timelines, and it's like really dark. And yeah, I binge read that one. I read it all in like a day, which I wasn't planning on doing, and I really liked it. But yeah, something about it just like didn't feel top 10 list to me. So
That's fair. I actually just picked that one for my book club, so
oh yeah, I didn't think about suggesting that one, but that's a good one.
yeah, I'm excited for my book club to read that one.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Are those all of your honorable
Yeah,
mentions?
those are my honorable mentions.
Okay. I have four honorable mentions then. The first one is The Easy Life by Marguerite Duras. This one, it's funny because I only gave it 4 stars, but it's like really stuck with me
Yeah.
and I still think about it a lot. And when I was, looking through my list, I initially had it on the top 10 because of just how like vivid some of the imagery was and the way that language was used to like portray the main character's mental breakdown and like dissociation was really well done. Uh and I still think about that one scene, which I will not mention because it's a spoiler, but I think you know which one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um so that's an honorable mention. My second honorable mention is one that I loved, but and at the time really, really emotionally moved me. And I took pictures of certain pages. It Is Mother Dead by Vigdis Hjorth,
Mhm.
which, yeah, I really enjoyed it. But just when I was like making my list, it wasn't one that I was kind of like had an immediate emotional response to seeing the title of. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
And then my next one is Elena Knows, which you also read. It is about an elderly woman who has Parkinson's disease, and man, how to describe it? It's about her reckoning with her daughter's death. Is that a spoiler?
No.
No. I think that's pretty early on.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
right away. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Couldn't remember when that was. Okay. But yeah, it's about that and it's about her kind of like also kind of her going throughout her day with Parkinson's disease and like how that affects her.
Yeah.
But I can't say any more than that without spoiling it. So,
No. No, you can't.
yeah. But loved that. Binge that in like a day. And then my final honorable mention, I think, is The Door by Magda Szabo. There's like this one and the other three at the bottom of my list are like all interchangeable for me in terms of
Mhm.
where they are on my list. Like,
Mhm.
truly, this could have been on the list. This could have been number 7 on the list if I don't know, but just a really, really beautiful book about a woman who hires a housekeeper and their relationship and yeah, I don't know, like really emotionally moved me. I cried during this
Yeah.
book and I do still think about it a lot. Just like the way the older woman, the housekeeper, is characterized in the book and her like inability to show love and to like express emotions to other people. And like the way that their friendship grows and the trust is built between them was like very profound to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I liked all those books, but we'll see
I'm
where.
curious if any of those are on your list. Although didn't
Yeah.
you read The Door long before I
I
did?
read The Door a couple of years ago, but I don't think it made my list that year, but I mean, I did love it. So, yeah.
Hmm. All
Okay,
right.
you want
Well,
to,
I guess we're on to our top
yeah.
10.
Yeah. You want to start? Because I started for the worst. So,
All right. Um, so this is bizarre because this one also was on and off. The last three on my list were on and off along with The Door.
yeah.
And this one is one that would have perfectly fit one of my superlatives, the
Hmm.
superlative of best genre fiction.
Oh,
Um, uh, but you know what? I like had to put it on the list, even though I think
yeah.
I gave it 4 stars. It is Wool by Hugh Howey.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just like remember enjoying this book so much when I read it that I was like, I listened to it on audio and I was like literally just like laying in bed listening to it. It was so good. And it was so
Yeah.
like compulsively readable. And I love sci-fi where you're like dropped into kind of a strange dystopian world and you don't really know what's going on and there's this like underlying mystery. And that's what this is. It's about a community of people living inside a silo. They don't know why they're there. It's like sort of implied that it might be the future, but we don't even know that. Um, and it's about the mystery surrounding the society and the people living there and how they deal with the unknown.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just was like obsessed with it. So even though I don't think like very literary, it really,
Yeah.
I still think about it a ton and I loved it.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. My number 10 is Boulder by Ava Sarda. And this one is about a woman who's kind of a solitary woman. She works as a chef on a ship because she doesn't want to like really be around people that much, but she falls in love with a woman and they move to Iceland. And then the woman wants to have a child and she's never wanted to have a child. So it's like about what happens after that, and her grappling with it. And this one maybe is a little bit of recency bias because I read it last month and really liked it. So that's kind of why it's like top of the list because I'm not sure how long it will stick with me, but I don't know. I just really liked it. It's like the kind of novel I really like where it's like short little bursts of like um a person's life, but like really intimate with the character and really beautiful language. And also, she was just such an interesting character who was like not very likable, but like I just really like getting inside of a character's head when I find it believable, you know? So, and also I like the themes of like parenthood and whether or not you want to be a parent. Interesting. So,
My number 9 is Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. This is one that I loved at the time. Like I like
mhm,
cried during it. I was like thought it was so good. And like now I don't have that same kind of reaction. Like it hasn't actually stuck with me as much.
mhm,
But I just remember how moved I was by it at the time, so I had to put it on. And it is about a woman in Silicon Valley. It's like kind of about being in a hopeless world and not really knowing how to deal with living in late stage capitalism and deal with like also the world sort of falling apart around you and like not really being able to do anything about it. And
mhm.
then it's also sort of about grief. It's also sort of about like relationships. It's about so many things. I don't know. And it had like a central element of magical realism that really like made the book for me.
Yeah. I read this one. I liked it. I will say like it was one of the best. Like I read a lot of books I felt like this year that dealt with like capitalism and technology specifically, and I thought that one was like the best one that handled it in the most interesting way. And Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something too that I read it as an arc, and it
Yeah.
was like the first like arc I was approved for, I think. Or at least the
Yeah.
first like popular one. And so it like felt really special to get to read it. And I had read her first book, The Book of X, fairly recently before I read that one and really liked that one too. So it was kind of like a, yeah, it was just like a nice experience.
Yeah. Okay, my number 9 is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Um, this one is about a woman who takes pictures of men in kind of compromising positions in like a form of feminism, but is it really art? I don't know. She's kind of a narcissist. And I don't know. It's weird to call it a fun time, but it was kind of a fun time, but also it was just like a really good exploration of like how certain things that are abusive can be like pulled under the rug because of what they're calling themselves. Like, like art, like it's not abuse, it's art. And again, it's a character, you're in the character's head and you like really understand all of her motivations, even though she doesn't even really understand her motivations. And I mean, yeah, I really liked it. So
All right. My number 8 is Death Valley by Melissa Broder. Uh, again, this one was like on and off the list, but I think it was one of those things of like hitting right at the right time.
yeah.
Again, I read it as an arc, which I think just makes anything a little bit more special to me because it's like I get to read this before anyone else does, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so it just like feels like I think I pay extra attention to books when they're arcs and it feels just somehow more magical. But
Hmm.
it was so funny and so heartbreaking at the same time. Like the way that she's able to blend humor and like these really profound moments exploring like death and grief and like existentialism along like that alongside the humor is just like I don't know how she does it. It's so good. Like I some of the scenes of her trying to survive in the desert were so fucking funny. Like just so funny.
Hmm.
And like I like think about this book sometimes when I'm just like walking in the woods by myself. I'm just like, "Oh, like what if I like get lost in the woods and have to survive? Like that would be me." Is like the shit this character does.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know. It was great.
Yeah. My number 8 is Cold Earth by Sarah Moss. Um, I mean, I love Sarah Moss, so I think one of her books has showed up on this list every year. Um, and this one was her first book, and it's more kind of like, I was going to say more pacey than some of her other ones, but I actually think a lot of her books are pretty pacey. But I mean, this one is about researchers in Greenland, and they get kind of stuck there and they can't communicate with the rest of the world. And yeah, just I mean, I like research based books and like field survival kind of based books. So I liked that, and I liked all of her characterizations, like always. And also, I gave it to my coworker who was going to Antarctica, and he loved it. And it's just, yeah, it's a fun book. So I was glad that I wasn't going to Antarctica because then I would have been scared about getting stuck there. But
Yeah. And there was also like a pandemic element to it.
yes, there's a pandemic
Yeah.
element.
My number 7 is Kick the Latch, which you had on your honorable mentions,
Yeah.
by Catherine Scanlon. Yeah, I also binged this one. I, as you said, it's like it's actually a true story. It's about a woman and her life, and her career at the like working at racetracks. I think there's something about knowing it's a true story that just like always kicks it up a notch for me. I don't even know like what it was about it that like moved me, but it was just very the writing was so colloquial and like matter of fact, and it really did read like some like she was just kind of telling you about her life, which is what
Hmm.
happened. Like the author had phone calls with this woman and many phone
Mhm.
calls where she told her stories about her life. But yeah, I don't know. It really worked for me, and I just found it really beautiful.
Well, speaking of true stories, my number seven is actually a memoir, which is The Wonderful Adventures of Miss Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole. And this was a Jamaican woman who wanted to, so it's basically the story of her life and how she like kind of becomes a nurse in different places, but mostly in the Crimean War, where she wanted to become a nurse, but she was rejected because she was Black by, the British forces there. And so she starts her own hotel and helps the soldiers and feeds the soldiers there. And I just like an old memoir, like kind of like when it's true, it just like, yeah, like what you were just saying, how it adds more. But I also like an adventure story. So it was like the combination of those. And just like when you read like firsthand sources from like, the 1800s or 1900s, whenever it was, it's just like it's like so much crazier than you think it would be sometimes. And just like the casual way they kind of talked about war was like mind-boggling a little bit. And she was like, oh, it was a fun time. And you're like, oh, it also sounds traumatizing. And she'd be like, it was sad sometimes when people died. But also just like a Black woman in, 18 whenever, like traveling the world and like owning a hotel. And so it was really nice to hear a different story like that. And yeah, it was fun. I'm glad that I found it because I hadn't heard of it really until, I don't know, I heard about it on YouTube or something like that and decided to read it. So
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff you said about it reminds me of After the Ice,
yeah,
which we also both read, which is like, again, just like crazy stuff happens to these adventurers
yeah,
exploring Iceland. I don't even remember where.
yeah,
And then like they're just casually talking about how all the dogs are starving to death and then they're eating the dogs and you're like, what the fuck? Like, yikes.
yeah.
My next one is one that I suspect is also on your list. It is Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. Yeah, it was just like a very engrossing story about it's like set up as a biography that this woman is writing about her dead wife, who
Mhm.
was an enigmatic artist. The main character is like interviewing people who knew her, and she's trying to like piece together her dead wife's life, and along the way uncovers a lot of her wife's secrets. And then there's like this whole other subplot too about her wife's background growing up in this like alternate version of the US. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was just like such a kind of like a puzzle box of a book. I loved the themes of kind of like exploring how you can never really know someone and how there are so many facets to each of our beings, and you just I don't know. Like
Yeah.
the relationship between them two was really sort of strange, and like was it abusive? I don't know. Maybe it was just like there was a lot to think about, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
My number five is Gray's Bees by Andrev Kurvov. And this is one that I was like kind of surprised that it ended up on this list, but because I liked it when I read it, but like it's just like stuck with me more than I thought it honestly would. And it was just really moving to me, but it's about a beekeeper in Ukraine who he lives like on the gray zone. So like it's like the border between Russia and Ukraine. And there's fighting going on there. So basically almost all of his village, except for one other man, have moved out. But he's staying there to take care of his bees. And it's just like he's just trying to live a quiet life and there's war going on. And then like to save his bees, he has to like move and he like actually moves into like Crimea, which is another occupied territory. and like some things happened there. And yeah, I just found it really touching. Like it was just a quiet story about the things that happen in war that are sad, but like just the people still trying to survive who are just like just normal people, you know, they're not really on either side. They're just trying to live where they've always lived. And yeah, it really stuck with me a lot. So
Our top five now.
yeah.
All right, my top five is, or yeah, my number five is one that you already talked about, which is Cold Earth by
Oh.
Sarah Moss. This one actually, like, it was like up and down on the list,
Mm.
but I remember having this thought, like, when I was reading it way back last January. I remember thinking to myself, don't forget how good this book was. Like, I just remember having that thought, and I was like, you're right, Lorna. Like, you gotta knock that up on the list. Because it was extremely bingeable. I
Yeah.
binged it in like a day, 2 days or something, and I just could not put it down. It's like, I mean, she does intimate looks at people's interior lives so well,
Yeah.
and you just like, oh man, you just like feel like you're a part of the person you're reading about, and they're so intelligent and like so well crafted in terms of like how real these people feel to you.
Hmm.
And this particular Sarah Moss, which that's a characteristic of all her books, but like this particular one also had elements that I personally really enjoy, which are similar to the things that you already mentioned, like adventures, love and adventure, love, like, again, something where you don't really know what's going on. And in this book, you do not know what's going on. Like, you think there might be ghosts, you think there might be a pandemic, you think the whole world might be dead.
Hmm.
Like, then you think maybe someone actually just sabotaged them. Like, you've no idea what the truth is. Those two things combined, like the mystery element combined with just being so deeply inside each of these characters' heads, and like each of them are grappling with very different personal things too. I was
Yeah.
just like, I couldn't put it down. The only thing about this book that bothered me, which, like, if you don't want any spoilers, stop listening now, was the ending.
Yeah.
Like, the ending really, I still think about how much of a shame it is if the ending would have been better.
I mean, the ending is probably why it's so high on my list. I mean, it still made my best list of the year, but like the ending was like, okay, yeah, that's like a 8 and not a 2, you know?
Yeah, and I really think it is a thing of like she just hadn't like evolved her writing enough to like know how to end it yet, because it's
Yeah.
a very like sort of stereotypical ending of like
Yeah.
what this book is. And in her more recent work, she doesn't have that problem. Like, she has no problem kind of just like not trying to tie things up. She'll just like end it, which I think
Yeah.
is much better. Um, but yeah, I just very enjoyable read.
Yeah. My number 5 was one that was on your honorable mentions. It is Mother Dead by Vigas Hudorth, or something like that. I mean, yeah, you talked about how you kind of talked about the plot and about how it's this artist going back to interact with her mother. And I mean, I just found it so bingeable, but then also like, yeah, I really liked the themes of like family and like trying to like the idea of like a daughter really trying to reconnect with a mother and the mother just like not being open to it. It was like kind of crazy. And there's like some things that happen in that book that are like wild. And I'm not gonna spoil
Yeah.
it, but like it goes places. And so it was really good. But I also just like put it so high on the list because like I always love like what I learned about the author in real life definitely affects my reading of it. And I also loved reading her other book and like thinking about how, I mean, it's fiction and she says that as fiction, but it seems like it's like inspired by her life. And I'm like really intrigued by her as an author and stuff too. And so I like just love that whole like kind of storyline with it too. And I also just heard about a different book by her that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read that. So
I am also very intrigued by her. And like you read her, yeah, we both read her other one too. And
The Will and Testament, right?
yes, that's what it's called. Yes. And Will and Testament is like I think I may have even liked that one better had I read it first
Mm.
and had it been
Mhm.
like a fresh look at her style of writing.
Mhm.
And that one was on what list? International Booker.
Yeah, this one was an international booker.
Yeah.
I have success with those ones apparently because also Andrei Kurkov was on the international booker, but I couldn't get his modern one because it hasn't come. It comes out in America next year, so or like this year, I guess now. So I had read Graysby's for that. So yeah, it's a good list for me this year.
Four now? Yeah, four.
Yes.
My four is also one that you've already talked about. It is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark.
Hmm.
My number four, three, and two were kind of all intermingled and I switched them around a few times, but I
Okay.
think it's at the right spot now. But it was like a thriller, but also oh, I there's so much like I can't say without spoiling it. I'm trying to what can I say that hasn't been said? Yeah, I just found it really, really readable. It like was pacey, but it was also there was also a lot of like interesting internal dialogue. But I think what I enjoyed most about it was just being inside the head of someone who is like clearly not well. Like and like watching her justify her actions and kind
Yeah.
of like watching her spiral, but then, without any spoilers, just like the flashback she has and then kind of like just how everything comes together was just
Yeah.
like brilliant to me.
Yeah, true. Okay, my next one, my number four, is one that I suspect will be high on your list, which is The Wall by Marlene Hausenhofer. I mean, this is like a survival story of a woman who's in the woods alone, and then there's this invisible wall, and she can't get past it, and it's just about her surviving in the woods after that point, kind of. But just like this one had like such beautiful writing. Like very rarely in a book am I like, oh, I want to underline like every other sentence, but I wanted to, and I couldn't because it was your copy.
You could
um,
have. I like bought a second copy of that book. I liked it so much.
yeah, I know. And yeah, just like so like heartwarming, but also like comforting in a way, in a weird way, like just like the settings kind of. I mean, I know that I didn't cry as much as you did, I think, which is why it's number four, but I still think it's just a beautiful book. So,
Yeah, I'll say more about it when we get to it on my list. All right, we're on to number three. My number three is Jane, a Murder.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just like it's another one of these books where knowing it's a true story and that someone has like and especially knowing that like the author is so close to this true story too, like it's
Hmm.
her aunt that was
Hmm.
murdered. Um and yeah, if you don't know what it's about, it is about the murder of Maggie Nelson's aunt in the 1970s, 80s?
70s, I think. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think 70s. And the way it's written is it's kind of like it's excerpts, short little excerpts from Jane's diary, and then it is also sort of like poetry or poetic prose from the author Meg Nelson. And it's like a blend of those things. It's very like not a lot of words on each page. It's very like quick. It was just a very beautiful meditation on how awful it is to not know the answer
Hmm.
and how her family has dealt with the loss. And like, yeah, I can't even describe it, but it was very poetic, very beautiful. And also, I think reading Jane and then also reading Maggie Nelson's other book on the same subject, which is a very different style.
Hmm.
It's more of a memoir style, called The Red Parts.
Yeah.
Um, Reading that directly after reading Jane was like just like a mind-blowing experience.
Yeah.
Um, highly recommend reading them both back to back if you're going to read them, and read Jane first.
Yeah, I read them in the opposite pattern. I read Red Parts first and then Jane. And yeah, I do think I recommend reading Jane and then Red Parts. And I also read them a couple months apart, but I mean, still reading them both together in the same year is like just they're amazing. So did not make my top 10 list, but would recommend. So
It didn't make your top 10?
no.
Wow, Ellie, I was like waiting for it on yours.
Oh, really? Yeah. I
Yes,
don't know why. I
I
just
thought
like,
for sure it would be up in your like top three.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know why I didn't, but didn't. So I guess
Not
I
even an honorable mention?
well, I use it in the superlatives.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's fair.
Because I did only do honorable mentions that I didn't use on the superlatives. So
That's fair. I might use some of my honorable mentions in my
yeah,
super.
that's a fair thing. But my number three is one you talked about, which is The Book of X by Catherine Lacey. Yeah, just such an interesting um structure of the book, I
Yeah.
guess, that like builds so many layers. I loved like the alternate history America that she created to write this book that she wanted to write. And yeah, just the way you slowly learn about the relationships and what's real and what's not real is just so good. And I loved it. So, yeah. And again, once I like when I hear an author talk about something, it like definitely affects it, how I think about it. And it's just like hearing her interview after reading it. I mean, I already loved it reading it, and then hearing her interview was just like, oh, this is like genius, you know? So, yeah, I loved it. So,
I totally agree. And also that's another one that sort of plays with like what is art and like where are the boundaries of art, because
yeah.
like the central character in the book, you never really understand whether all of these personas she has are a form of performance art or whether it is like who she like you never know. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just yeah, it was very good. Okay, on to number two. This one I feel like is maybe one of your top two too. Maybe not. If it didn't make your list, I'm a little shocked. Since I have it here. Oh, I should have held up some of the other ones. It is The Sluts.
Did not make my top. I
What?
mean, I love this book, but like, I don't know. I just like it's so much that I just couldn't put it on there.
I think this is like, wow. Okay. Yeah, The Sluts. I'm holding it up here, but I can't recommend that anyone read this. Like, in fact, I'd recommend you don't read it unless you like really know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't know what I was getting into, but I'm also like very okay with reading extremely depraved stuff. Like this was maybe the most, I think it is the most depraved book I've read. Like
Yeah.
I think it eclipsed hurricane season,
Yeah.
maybe.
I think it did.
Um, yeah, and it's like probably the book that I've had the biggest sort of like physical reaction to in terms of just being like, whoa, like how did you even think of this? You
Yeah.
know? Like
Mm.
that's how fucked up it is. Um, but it is about a male sex worker who you never get like a first person perspective from, but it is told primarily from like different internet forums. Like I guess that doesn't show a great picture, but you see sort of like these profiles, like review 17 or whatever, and it's different men reviewing this escort on this website where people review sex workers. And so this male sex worker becomes sort of this like mythological figure among these men on this in these chat rooms and on this review website. And I just I don't know if I've ever read something that is so like mind-blowing in terms of like not knowing what's true, what's false, like who's lying, who's even a real person. Like
Mhm.
I just like and like that level of like it's not even confusion. It's just like I don't know, like a puzzle, I guess. Like that level of puzzle and mystery and then also like just the like completely shocking, horrible things that happen in the book.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't know if they're really happening. Like I don't know. I just felt like my mind was exploding. It was it was like it was crazy. And I read it, I think in two sittings, and I just like felt sick afterwards. Like I
Yeah.
felt so ill that I think I gave it 4 stars. And I was like, I don't think I can give this 5 stars because of like how completely ill this made me. But looking back, I was like, no, this is like that's what makes it 5 stars. Like
I mean, so like I kind of had the opposite reaction when I finished it. I was like, this is obviously 5 stars just because of what he does with like the how you don't know what's going on and you don't know it's real. And like I mean, it was like probably one of the first internet books, that like really explored the crazy things that are happening on the internet those days. But like I just couldn't put it on my top 10 because it made me feel so disgusted with the book, but also like what is the world like? Like, is this like a reflection of parts of the internet that I am very far from? Like just yeah. So
I mean, yeah, I think it is, but I think like part of it is like yeah, I think that's a big part of it is like are these people for real on the internet? Like,
yeah,
is this something like, are people actually making snuff films?
yeah,
Are they? Or are they just talking about it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know
Like,
either.
I don't want to find out, but I am glad I got the thrill of reading about it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, please don't read this though. Anyone watching this channel, don't read it. Uh, yeah.
Okay, my number two is one that you probably wouldn't have guessed, but is Tale for a Time Being by Ruth Ozeki.
Hmm.
Because I know you didn't like this one. Well, right off the bat, you didn't like this one as much as I liked this one, but it's just stuck with me. I read this like February, March, or something like that, and it's really stuck with me. And I really loved the way the author like wrote herself in, and I loved the magical realism elements of it, and like just the really touching story of like the girl in Japan and her family. And yeah, it's just really stuck with me in a way that has lasted through the year. And so this is about a woman in Canada who is an insert kind of for the author, and she finds a journal, and it's this journal of this girl in Japan, and she's having a really hard time, and the woman in Canada then tries to like reach out and find her, and has like some magical realism elements that are kind of slight, not like it's not like surrealist, but it's just like the right touch of magical realism for me. Um, and it explores a lot of like Japanese culture and like family there and the pressures of the society there in ways that I've read before, but I don't know. This one was just really unique. And I also like Ruth Ozeki as an author. I've liked all of her books that I've read before, but this one was the best so far. So yeah,
I am kind of shocked that that's your number two, just because like I know you really liked it, but like
I
I think
cried in this one and I didn't cry in a lot of the other ones. So
that's just wild to me, I guess. Like yeah,
yeah.
I didn't cry and I think this was like maybe a 3.5 for me. Like it was not one that stuck with me and it was not one that I felt like I think I liked it a good deal, but I wasn't, amazed by it. So,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, we're on to our number one books.
Oh.
Top book of the year, which mine is like not a surprise. It's The Wall.
Yes.
Um, I mean, you already gave like a brief summary, but it is about a woman who for mysterious circumstances. Like we don't know why she's ends up stuck in also sort of an undisclosed area. Like we don't know exactly how much room she has. We know it's like a significant amount, like it's probably several square miles, and there's just an invisible wall that's a barrier between her and the outside world. And she's stuck in this like old hunting lodge. She was there with her friends and they had gone into town for the evening, so they, were stuck outside of the wall. And um she doesn't know what happened. Maybe everyone's dead outside the wall. Like we don't know.
Mhm.
Um, but this was like I have been waiting all year for something to even come close to how I feel about this book, and like nothing has. Like in previous years when we've done top 10 lists, it's been really hard to choose a top book.
Mhm.
This year, the entire year, I knew it was going to be this book. Like I'm like, nothing can even come close to this, and it hasn't. But like just like you said, the writing is really beautiful, but also like the relationship she forms with animals in the book was like very poignant. Um, and I also read this when I was house sitting alone in my partner's parents' home, taking care of their dog and two cats. And in this book, the woman also has a dog and a cat. And like, I don't know. I don't know. I can't even, I still like don't even know how to talk about it. It was so good. But it's like it's very feminist and it's kind of about this woman like becoming herself and like being able to finally become herself without the constraints of society.
Mhm.
But also like the inherent loneliness of that and her grappling with the idea that she may never see another human being again.
Yeah.
And that if anything goes wrong, she could die. Like it's I don't know, like it's such a special book to me. I wept and wept. Like I was physically sobbing during one part of this book. And like I've thought about it literally every day this year, I think. Like
Yeah.
that's not a joke. Like it's definitely one of my all-time favorite books. Um yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my top book of the year is one that was only on your honorable mentions, and honestly, I'm a little bit shocked, but it was Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. Yeah, this book was just, I thought, really moving about the way it explored so many topics, like mostly to do with like bodily autonomy, but in so many different ways. Like getting old and like having to, be in a new body that you don't understand and how the world reacts to that. But then also like things surrounding being a woman. And I don't want to spoil anything, but like things like that. And then, and like, I don't really know how it's hard to talk about without spoiling
I
it.
know.
But like, yeah, but then the ending was like so shocking to me too. And it's just like you think you know where the story is going and you think it's saying a lot of things, and then it just says something else, and you're like, dang, like crazy. And like yeah, just a way to like write a really moving, powerful story in just a short amount of time. It's so small. And yeah. So, oh, I watched the Netflix movie and I don't recommend it. So,
Good to know.
but the book
Um
definitely recommend.
yeah, this was a really good book. It easily could have been also on the lower portion of my list too.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And just like thinking also about how it was written in like Argentina in like the 2008, I think, is like just like that society. I feel like is so, well, my impression of it is that it's much more conservative than ours even. So like thinking about it being written then and about what a statement it is for like women's rights, but also elderly rights and like all of the things that it comments on. So
I mean, I knew that one would be on your list. I knew it would be high on your list too.
yeah.
I did not anticipate it being first on your list.
Well, my top three were like kind of moved around, but
Yeah.
this is what I landed on. So
I genuinely thought your top book was going to be Jane.
interesting. I mean, I liked it, but like for some reason, I just like didn't even consider it. So you never know, you
It's
know?
so wild. Yeah. I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of other. Okay. So
I do think if I had read Red Parts and Jane together, like at the same moment of time, it would have been on there, you know?
yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think we just had like different experiences with it. Uh,
Yeah.
okay. So what number did you think?
I thought we were gonna have five overlapping. So I only put six books on there that you had read. So I thought you would I knew you would have The Wall, obviously. Um, and then I thought you would have Elena Knows on there, and Book of X, and Is Mother Dead? I didn't think Cold Earth would be on there. So I don't know why. Just because of the ending, I guess.
I didn't think so either, Ellie. It wasn't on there for a while, and then I was like, I gotta trust myself.
I mean, it is a great book. I do recommend it, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think this year I prioritized also like more like I prioritize emotion and I also prioritize like reading experience. And I think
yeah,
that's reflected with both like Cold Earth, with the sluts,
yeah,
with uh
Wool.
Wool being
Yeah,
on there. Like I wanted to like just really honor books that I couldn't put down, which I
yeah,
think are often not as long lasting in terms of their impact on me, but I
yeah.
like wanted to think about that more this year. So,
Mhm.
okay, so you thought we would have five. I thought we would have six. Turns out
We only had four.
we had Boy Parts, Biography of X. That's it, isn't it?
No, we had Boy
Oh, The
Parts,
Wall,
The Wall, Biography of X, and Cold Earth.
Cold Earth. Right. I forgot that you also put Cold Earth. Okay. So we did have four, yeah.
Yeah,
That's decent, but usually we do have more overlap.
yeah, yeah,
So that's kind of fun. Okay, well, do we want to do like an outro or what is your
yeah. Um, Goodbye. Read these books because they were good, except for the sluts. Don't read it.
It was great, but don't please don't read it because you're gonna come at me after you read it. I don't recommend it. It's really good though. And maybe if you have like a very specific no, I can't say that. If you have a really specific kink about uh Nick Carter's dead body.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Yep. Bye.